Hello and welcome to HateWatchers. Today we're kicking off our weekly coverage of Skeleton Crew with episodes 1 and 2 titled This Could Be a Real Adventure and Way Out Past the Barrier, respectively. Let's punch it right into the breakdown. Spoilers ahead. After a quick opening text explaining the prevalence of space pirates during this time, we see a ship get triple penetrated and impregnated by pirates who proceed to slaughter everyone on board. And I thought this was a kid's show. The pirate captain blows open the vault that's packed to the rafters with all the fucks people give about this show. And one credit, and the other pirates are really mature about it. From there, we jump over to a special kid with a very galaxy far away upbringing, playing with Star Wars toys, eating Wheaties, and getting neglected by his father, who tries to buy his love. Wim, as he's known, runs out the door to head to school, avoids the dog trying to attack him because of his fro, and runs down the street in the middle of planet Suburbia. While they're waiting for the bus, Wim viciously attacks this blue elephant kid as they battle over the title of school's biggest nerd, and Wim is about to land a killing blow, but he stops when he realizes there are witnesses. On the bus, Wim is studying for daydreaming class on his iPad when he sees the coolest 11-year-olds in history on a motorcycle. In class, Wim gets caught drawing dirty pictures on his Etch-a-Sketch, and when the useless, overpaid school administrator asks him what he wants to be when he grows up, he says a YouTuber.
Study hard, get...
After class, Wim and his little blue friend, Neil, talk about how if they're going to fail tomorrow's test, they might as well just get into drugs now, and they discuss how to find some. Then we hop over to the cool girls zipping around town on a speeder that runs on hopes and dreams and joy and... Oh no. On the way home, Wim gets jealous of Neil's elephant pride. Meanwhile, Cyclops is repairing their bike when some kids show up intent on bringing back bullying. The other girl, who we learn is named Fern Gully, returns home where her mother, the administrator from earlier, gives her the award for most disappointing daughter. Wim stays up late reading Jedi fairy tales, but the next morning he's late and the short bus leaves him behind. He rushes to his bike and jets off, avoids another racially charged dog attack, and heads into the forest in search of 7th graders who will sell him drugs. Meanwhile, all the other 11-year-olds prepare to take their big test, and Neil tries to stall for Wim by complaining that there's no trunk gender bathrooms in this school. Wim ends up flying into a ditch where he discovers something hidden in the dirt, but before he can explore it, a homeless droid shows up begging for credits so he can get a lube job. As Wim waits to see the principal, the cool girl shows up and asks what he did, and he says, drugs, all cool-like. Then his dad emerges and tells him if he doesn't pass the exam tomorrow, the ghost of his dead mom is going to haunt him. At home, the elephant kids are watching something that I'm not sure they should be watching, and then Wim climbs onto the roof to peep on Neil in the bathtub. The two head out into the woods where Wim tries to kill Neil again. As they dig out Wim's recent discovery, Cyclops and Fern Gully corner them and put their heads on the chopping block, but the girls spare them if the boys will do all the manual labor for them. Typical. They finally pop this thing open and discover it's an old spice den. Wim's dad comes looking for him and finds only his helmet, so he sullenly starts looking around for the head. Deeper in the spice den, the kids find a dead spice head and accidentally close the door behind them. As they look for a way to get the power back on, Wim gets mad at Neil for going with the chicks, but Neil says he just really wants a girlfriend. Meanwhile, Wim finds his evil twin down there and hops on the walkie-talkie to reach Neil, but the girls take it from Neil's hanging, lifeless body. Cooties kill, people, remember that. When Wim hits the rumble button, the whole place starts shaking, and they discover that the spice den is actually a spice ship, and Wim's dad watches as they blast off toward adventure. The kids wisely press every button in sight, and they blast off into hyperspace as the first episode comes to an end. Episode 2 opens up with the kids in the middle of a bad trip when they hear a noise down the hall, but it's just a hand-holding droid who comes up and holds Wim's hand, and then we learn it's actually a pirate droid named SM-33, Smee. Fern Gully announces herself as the new captain of this vessel, and the droid says, "Okay, I better handle the driving then." The kids tell the droid to return them home, but there's no record of their home planet at Aten. Wim can't stop his nervous farting, and he's banished from the cockpit as they set off for the nearest starport. Back on Atten, Wim's dad alerts some security droids that the kids took off in a starship, but the droids say, "Can't you read the signs? This is a starship-free zone, and they're illegal, so that couldn't possibly have happened." Meanwhile, on board, Wim finds some cool skeletons and a pirate hat as they arrive at their destination, where this little monkey ferries them to the port. Here they see all sorts of magical things like a guy puking, and a brothel, where one of the space hookers grabs the two girls and wants to help them get home. Meanwhile, the boys are doing just fine in this hive of scum and villainy, and grabbing some ramen. Wim tries to pay with his credits, which draw the interest of a nearby pirate, and this leads to the food vendor pulling a knife on him. When they're asked where they're from, the kids say Atten, and no one can believe them. And it's not long before all the pirates are offering the kids candy they all have in their vans. Wim decides this is a good time to return the ramen, which was clearly too hot anyway, and they run away. At the same time, the girls learn from the wise hooker that their home planet is the fabled lost world of eternal treasure. The girls run back to the boys, and Fern Gully fires the blaster she had this whole time. When one pirate takes it from her, however, Smee shows up to defend his captain. The droid stands on business and tears up the whole spaceport as they escape to the ship, right past Space Urkel. But the droid gets blasted by the vampire wolf, and Urkel says,
"Did I do that?"
The kids get thrown in jail for grand theft ramen, and they find that they're sharing a cell with some sketchy guy who reeks of prison wine. But he proves to be their new best friend when he seemingly uses the Force to pull the key to the cell to himself, and Wim says, "Damn, that shit was wizard," as the episode comes to an end. Well, we've reached that point in the video where we have to decide if this episode was a great watch or a hate watch. But I'm giving these first two episodes a debate watch label for one simple reason. This show is definitely aimed at a younger audience like we thought it would be, so I can't necessarily recommend it to all of you. I think the show, so far, which is an important caveat, is good at what it does, and it could be something your kids might like. Or if you just feel like taking a trip down memory lane with an 80s, 90s style adventure show with a slight Star Wars flavoring. But outside of that group of people, and hardcore Star Wars fans, you're probably fine sitting this one out. Skeleton Crew definitely lives up to its billing as a whimsical, Amblin-style, Goonies in space, Treasure Island-themed kids adventure show set in the Star Wars universe. On that note, I'd say it leans more into the previous descriptors than it does the Star Wars one. Star Wars is really just the backdrop for this Treasure Island type of show. But after the first two episodes, it seems like it could be a cozy, easy-to-watch kind of show that might be able to keep up a decent, entertaining pace over the course of the season. There are a ton of references to other Star Wars shows, movies, and other media just in these first two episodes. And I will say that there's quite a bit of intrigue built up around this planet the kids came from, Atten. The pirates and the hooker all regard it as a mythical, lost world full of treasure like Atlantis, and no one has much knowledge about it. The planet itself is isolationist with a barrier meant to prevent travel to and from the planet. The actual society seems pretty Orwellian and a bit communist, with them trying to indoctrinate children into contributing to, quote, the great work. And everyone lives under some form of lockdown, droids run everything, and the droids even seem to be able to track the children somehow. So if there's one thing of interest to me that I can hold on to when watching this show, it's learning more about how and why this planet is being kept secret from the rest of the galaxy. Now, the general feeling going into Skeleton Crew was one of cautious optimism. Although I think nauseous optimism is more fitting given Disney Star Wars' track record. Most people thought it would be a whimsical adventure show generally aimed at kids. But let's be real, Disney Star Wars has squandered any right it has to the benefit of the doubt or unqualified optimism. The goodwill has to be earned back. And Skeleton Crew could be a step in the right direction, but it's one small step out of thousands they need to take to get back into people's good graces. And for many fans, you can take all the steps you want, but if the bridge is burnt, you're not getting them back. Skeleton Crew being a decent show barely moves the needle for someone like me, and Disney Star Wars remains near the bottom of the massive, abyssal hole they dug themselves into. And even with the show not being as immediately awful as recent Star Wars shows, I still think the viewership will be borderline pitiful for Skeleton Crew. There was simply no hype going into this show, and many legitimate Star Wars fans didn't even know it was premiering this week. And I know you're probably not watching it. So remember, here at HateWatchers, we'll watch it so you don't have to. And you can tune in here each week to see what you missed without subjecting yourself to another Disney Plus Star Wars show. Also, Skeleton Crew is not a serious show, and it's not trying to be one, so I'm going to match that level of seriousness in my reviews. Which means you can expect the review portions of these videos to be a bit lighter and less detailed than they were with some of the other shows we've covered in the past. It only seems fitting. So far though, Skeleton Crew is what they said it would be, a whimsical adventure show aimed at a younger audience. And honestly, with it following so closely in the footsteps of the Goonies or Treasure Island, it's the farthest thing from groundbreaking, as it's simply treading multiple paths that are well worn. But because of that, it's offering a bit of a cozy, nostalgic kind of feeling, and it's doing that well so far in most people's eyes. That being said, apparently there may be problems on the horizon in episode 3. We'll just have to see what next week's episode brings us, so there's another reason to tune back into HateWatchers, as if you needed any more reason to. Did you check out Skeleton Crew? Were you one of the people who didn't even know a live-action Star Wars show was premiering this week? How do you think viewership is going to compare with something like The Acolyte? Let us know in the comments. And remember to leave a like on the video and subscribe to HateWatchers to stay up to date on Skeleton Crew. Thank you for rejecting all offers of candy in vans with us today, and we'll catch you on the next one.